in the flying corps. We had fires in the anteroom, and we were comfortable. And as a matter of fact, we were as well off as we should have been in England. As an ex-infantryman, all the time I think I was thinking of the infantry during that terrible weather. When I left, my brother officer said, "Good heavens, haven't you seen enough planes come down in flames?" I said, "Yes, but haven't you seen enough death in trenches?"
All the men who were actually working on aircraft were held before the commander. And he said something like this. He said, "You men must guard these aircraft with your lives. Without these aircraft, the army is blind. We are the eyes of the army. And if it's between you and the aircraft comes first. We've got plenty of men, but we can't get aircraft."
It certainly paid a pilot to listen, because he flew entirely from the ear. And after I had flown with these engines, something over 12 months, I could tell whether that thing is missing because the mixture was too rich, or that a plug had cut out, or a rocker arm had broken.
From the moment he took off, the pilot never looked at his instrument again. Never. He went by the feel on the joystick, the feel on his feet, and the wind on his face. It was all manual, which was one reason why people who had been good horsemen tended to be good pilots. The same delicacy of touch on the controls, as opposed to a grab or a job in the mouth on a horse, was what made for good and pleasant flying.
Our enemy was the Fokker. And the one thing about the Fokker was it had a ceiling which was so high that it left every RFC aeroplane standing like a goldfish in a bowl with its nose up and not getting up at all. We could not reach it. And the system was to get up high and wait. And when it was up at about, say, 17 or 18,000 feet, we would come waffling along at about 10, and they would then dive down on our bombers.
For the first time in centuries, we entered again an era of individual combat.
You get underneath the other fellow's tail, because with his guns placed as they were, he couldn't hit you, but you could have written your initials with your gun on the bottom of his fuselage.
We had no conception then at what close ranges it was necessary to shoot to have any effect at all. In fact, we later on learnt that effective range was 50 yards.
There was a sort of code, I think, merely between flying people, whether they were German or British. I had a flight commander who was shot down in flames, but 2 days afterwards, a German airplane came over, dropped a message bag, and told us that the gallant Captain Pike was shot down in mortal combat and has been buried behind our lines with full military honors. The most difficult duty of a squadron commander, I found, was on the many occasions one had to write to the next of kin to advise them of the death of their sons. That was a horrifying thing for a boy of 21 to have to do it.
The men in the trenches used to be sorry for the men who were up above with no means of sheltering from bullets and shells and quite vulnerable, where on our part we were sorry for the infantry floundered about in the mud in their trenches.